Before moving back to the States, I lived in Asia for a few years, and the specific country that I was moving back from was India. And it was kind of neat to move back to the States after being away for a few years because it felt like I was an immigrant coming to the States because I could choose anywhere I wanted to live, actually anywhere I wanted to live in the world. But I realized that I wanted to come back to the States because that's where my parents were, that's where my sisters were. And I was just, I think, kind of tired of traveling and I wanted to come back to the culture that I grew up in. The thing is, I didn't want to move back to the Midwest where I had spent the first 20 years of my life. I wanted a place that could kind of fit my personality, and that turned out to be Silicon Valley. And the reason I love Silicon Valley is because everything about Silicon Valley and all the people here that make it work, almost everything's about challenging conventional wisdom, challenging conventional thought, challenging the conventional way businesses work, the way businesses are put together. And that's really the approach I took with investing in, well, ever since my parents had their life savings embezzled from them when I was a teenager. I wanted to challenge Wall Street and conventional thinkers and independent financial advisors, which are also conventional thinkers for the most part. And so about 2 years ago, my wife got invited to a wedding by one of her friends. And it was on this gorgeous estate, about 2,000 acres, right here in the heart of Silicon Valley. So 2,000 acres anywhere is big, but a 2,000-acre rolling estate with art right in the middle of Silicon Valley is fairly impressive. So there were about 50 people invited to this very small wedding on this very big piece of land. And we finally sat down for dinner, and at dinner there was 4 couples per table. And at our table, there was a VC couple, a hedge fund couple, and a private equity couple. And then, and then Burgess and I. And I want to share with you the conversation I had with the VC woman sitting next to me, because I think it can also impact what happened or what it might be happening to your money. And even though this happened in the United States, what I'm going to talk about is going to kind of impact everyone around the world. Hey everyone, this is RC Peck, and this week's podcast for Fearless Wealth is something that's near and dear to me, and it's this theme which I'm going to call every dollar you earn is immediately 100% invested. Now, if you're in Australia, it's still $1. If you're in Taiwan, it's still $1. If you're in China, it's a yuan. If you're in Japan, it's a yen. If you're in Europe, most likely you're getting paid in euros, though not everyone is, and maybe you're getting paid in pounds. So just, every currency unit you earn is immediately 100% invested. And I want to talk about this idea because most people, when I speak to them, and this was the conversation I had with this woman who earns easily 7 figures a year at that wedding. She was talking to me about what she was doing with her money. And the one thing she said to me was, well, we have our money set aside in cash. It's sitting in cash. And so we don't really worry about it that much. And, I pulled out my iPhone and I pulled out a price chart of cash for her, and her jaw dropped. So every dollar that comes into your life, every yuan or yen or euro or pound that comes into your life is immediately 100% invested. There's no such thing as having your money set aside, because in the investment world, it's a closed system. Your money is always at all times invested in one of the 4 major classes within the investment world. It's either in stocks or bonds or physical assets or currencies. That's it. It's always in one of those 4. And there's nothing that you can set outside of those 4. So there's no such thing as setting your money aside. And this got me to thinking this past weekend where I pulled up a chart that kind of made me go, whoa, I didn't expect that. So look at this first price chart here. This is a price chart of the Chinese yuan against the US dollar. Now the actual fall of it is not that much. And this is from the beginning of the year till yesterday. And the Chinese yuan against the US dollar fell 1.2%. Now, the percentage fall by itself is not a big deal. But the fact is, the central government of China has been making the yuan more dear against the US dollar for years. And now they're devaluating it against the US dollar. So it's the change of trend that is so interesting. The Chinese are saying, hey, our currency has to be cheaper. I want the euros and the pounds and the dollars to be able to buy more of our services, more of our products. And one of the ways to do that is to make our products cheaper. And so I thought this was very interesting. And regardless of who you are or where you live, this should make you take note, because the Chinese yuan is one of the major currencies in the world. Now it's coming up more and more, and 10 years ago it almost didn't exist. But 5 years from now, it's going to be one of the 3 biggest currencies on this planet. Or I should say the 3 biggest printable currencies on this planet. The yuan, the dollar, the euro, probably still the yen. So those are going to be the 4 biggest printable currencies on this planet. But the yuan and the dollar and the euro are really going to be the 3 players going forward in the decades ahead. So this correction this fall is very important. Now look at this too. This is the Chinese yuan, and I actually changed pictures here. This is the Chinese yuan against the yen, the Japanese yen. It's fallen 4.25%. So they're pretty serious about devaluing their currency against other currencies around the world, because again, they export a lot to build up their GDP. So if they can make their currency cheaper, then their exports are cheaper. And this absolutely impacts you even if you're not getting paid in yen or yuan. Now here's the thing. Look at this price chart right here. This is the Japanese yen against the US dollar, down 24%. Now I know what you might be thinking, like, oh my gosh, RC, you're talking about currencies. I thought we were going to be talking about the stock market. No, this is important. People think cash is like some 5th element that you put your money in. Cash is a currency. There is no setting aside your money. It is always invested at all times. And the reason I'm showing you these charts is because the currencies of the world, the printable currencies of the world, have been devaluing themselves. Devaluing? I keep getting that mixed up. Against each other. Now, it started with the dollar, and it is moving around. And I'll show that to you in a second. This is important because if you think you can set your money aside in your local currency, you're wrong. It is fully invested in whatever currency you get paid in. That's why you want to look at where your money actually is and recognize that there's no sitting money aside. Imagine if someone came to you and said, I just set my money aside in, Oracle. It's just set aside in Oracle stock. Or I just set my money aside in Overstock.com stock or eBay shares. No one ever say that. But they do that with currencies, which is really interesting, and I think that's very dangerous. So the Japanese yen is down 24% against the US dollar over the last 5 months. The yuan, Chinese yuan, against the Japanese yen is down 4.25% just this year. And the yuan, which had been appreciating against the dollar, has now moved down. It has a change in direction, and a very severe change in direction, meaning it happened very quickly. This impacts your wealth. Now, here's the question. What do you think is going to happen to this price chart? Because this price chart you see right here is the US dollar against a basket of stocks from about middle 2001 till today. So there's 13 years of data on here. And from the very upper left part of the chart to kind of the lower right of the chart, it's fallen 33%. But look, over the last 6 years, it's been pretty stable. We're just going to call it stable, right? As low as 72, as high as 88. But it's been kind of stabilizing. So here's the question. Do you think that stability is going to stay? Do you think with China lowering their currency and Japan lowering their currency, do you think the US is just going to stand by and have their exports get more and more expensive? No, it's not. And do you think the euro or the European Central Bank is going to allow the euro to get more and more expensive? Which really, we all know it's really not Europe, it's really Germany. No. So we are in this currency war. We are in this devaluating against each other. But most people never see it because if you don't travel internationally, you don't really see what happens to your money. And if you do, you're usually doing it on vacation or business, both of which are either not your money or it's such a short time, it doesn't matter. So this is so invisible to so many people. So please realize your money is never set aside. And there's really no such thing as, well, it's just set aside in cash. It's always in one of the four classes, major classes: stocks, bonds, currencies, or physical assets. So to kind of wrap up this week's theme, I really want you to get the main point. And the main point in my final thought is your money is invested in a closed system, and your money is always invested. And I can even say your net worth and your wealth is always invested at all times. And just remember that your strategies, your approach, your method, I'll call it your strategies, determines your portfolio growth. It determines what you have or don't have in your future, and not your stock picks. Buy the right strategies and you get the future you want. This year, one of my strategies, Obvious Trend, is up 14%, which is pretty impressive because I only have 6 positions in it. And since I started sharing it with the outside world on January 1st, 2010, 4 years ago, it has beat the stock market those first 4 years by 33%, and this year is no different. And I just think what's so powerful about that, it's not the ticker symbols, it's not the stock picks, it's the strategy, it's how strong the strategy is. And the fact that this strategy, which I call Obvious Trend, has been not just barely beating, but really crushing the market for 4 years. And again, this most recent 2 months is the strategy determines your outcome. There are only 6 positions in that strategy. 6. And it's up 14% year to date, which is impressive because we've only been in this year 2 months. So hey guys, this is RC Peck at fearlesswealth.com. And just really, here's to taking back control of your wealth so you get the future you deserve.